Excited you could join the show. Excited to talk to you about the Lions. We do have a Bears fan in studio that's kind of tilting her head about talking about the Lions. But I'm curious about some of your takeaways from the game. Where I want to start is you had an interesting article after the first game. And I always try to remind people of this on the show because when they lost against Green Bay, I introduced the show as Welcome to Overreaction Monday because we have a tendency to live and die by the last game and not look at the arc of the season and where things are headed and all that. So I thought that was a good article because it kind of points out what we know to be true, but a lot of people don't notice in the moment, which is, hey, it's one game. It's the first game of the season. We learned that the Packers probably are pretty good. So that's one thing. But following you talked about some of the national pundits and everything, because that's really something to keep an eye on. That's why you want to keep an eye on the beats, on the local beats. Elaine's in the local Griffins beat here, and you're on the Lions beat. It's good to follow the beat writers because the national pundits, quote unquote, they kind of aggregate takes and they don't necessarily have a lot of knowledge for those individual games. So they're overreacting to the talking points of, well, the offensive coordinator left, the offense didn't look good, therefore it must be the offensive coordinator, not the new offensive line pieces, not the first game, not the pressure of the Packers. So I'm curious what made you write that article and kind of your thoughts on that subject matter as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, I think that a lot of the national pundits that we all know, and I know this from even my WNBA coverage experience, they don't watch all the games. They can't possibly cover every single team that they're talking about. It's a big ask. And so clearly they have to go off of certain talking points. And the biggest and easiest one, I think, for them to grab onto is obviously the loss of Ben Johnson over the offseason and the loss of Aaron Glenn. So I knew coming out of that game, the Lions weren't just going to get out with okay, well, that was just one game and they're going to get used to each other. And that just, like you said, tells us that Green Bay's defense is certainly for real. Instead, they completely went ballistic on the Lions and decided to declare that they had completely gone off the rails in one game, which I've never personally seen from any national media in my time of covering sports in general. And it was just ridiculous. And like you mentioned, like the offensive line, this is a young interior offensive line. They're going to get used to playing with one another. They're going to get used to the rhythm of an NFL game, especially Pete Ratledge, who's coming in and starting and being groomed to become the next center for the Lions. So I think we saw that major improvement for them in week 2. And now, of course, you don't really hear much about the Lions today after they beat Chicago because there's nothing to grab onto, especially after beating Ben Johnson. So it was just a complete overreaction. And at the same time, I think we have to temper our expectations considering, and I'm sorry to the Bears fan in the room, but they beat the Bears, who are clearly struggling as well to start the year. But it was a good sign.
Yes. So do you feel like this, how they played and how they won, how much they won by, paired with having the local voices be a little bit more amplified after this game, do you think that helped the fans kind of like just chill out a little bit about the rest of the season?
I would hope so. I think that they definitely were able to see that while Ben Johnson is obviously a significant loss to the coaching staff, they still kept their entire core on the offensive side. So there's no reason to panic about them regressing. We've seen, I think, enough from Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, like the list goes on, to understand that we already know who they are, which is to say a powerhouse. So I think that fans are kind of coming back to that reality of understanding things are just going to take a little bit of time to mesh with those few new pieces on the offensive line. And that's going to end up being the real glue of that offense throughout the year. So, yeah, I think they're definitely going to chill out a little bit.
A lot of the beat writers that I was following before the games kind of alluded to that fact. They talked about, hey, but not to underestimate the importance of Ben Johnson, but there's a lot of other coaches. Campbell was involved in obviously the culture and the decision making and started calling the plays before that and kind of got them on that path. Morton is an experienced play caller, should be fine. They were mentioning that Ragnow really is the bigger piece to lose than Johnson, that'll take a little longer to replace. We'll see what happens there, but I thought it was an important distinction to say, hey, they're shuffling these pieces around, and Ragnow is a multi-time All-Pro, Pro Bowler, probably bound for the Hall of Fame here, and they're losing him in the middle of that offense. And when they talk about, because Jonah Jackson obviously went to the Bears and did not look great. No offense to the Bears.
No, I mean, he didn't look great. I can be honest. He did not look good.
Well, I'm bringing this up because he used to be between Ragnow and one of the tackles, and that's a very prime spot to be in. And now when you don't have that in the Lions offensive line, that changes the math a little bit. So they've got to lean on those guards, and they've got to figure out that communication piece, because the five up front operate as a unit, and you've got to know what the other guys are going to do. They ostensibly didn't play as a unit until that first game, so it's really no wonder that it kind of looked like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the PFF grades, the Pro Football Focus grades, definitely reflected that between the two contests, especially with Tate Ratledge. I'm not anticipating him to come out and be an all-pro right away at guard. It's just impossible to place that expectation on him. I know there were a few rookies from week one for other teams on the offensive line that really shined. And I think some folks are maybe comparing their debuts to his. But we have to understand, again, he's getting used to things. You have Christian Mahogany, another younger guard, coming in. They're beginning to understand how to communicate with one another. Graham Glasgow is also getting used to playing center. So the communication and obviously the chemistry is going to come along week by week. So it's going to take time. It's going to take time. But I think the Bears win was definitely a confidence booster for everybody on the line.
I'm just relieved more so than anything, because if they would have lost to Ben Johnson, everything would have broken. I feel like I feel like it would have been a very hard team to cover this year.
That's why I wanted a tie.
Yeah, Elaine was rooting for a tie, which I like that as a take. Like, hey, let's just all tie and then we'll hold hands.
It would be a great story, right? Like, from a writer's perspective, that would be an amazing story to cover, especially if you're there live. Like, they meet again. He comes back to Ford Field. They run similar plays. They then they go to overtime and they just evenly match each other, and then they tie. I don't know. To me, that would be like so much fun.
So you wanted the Bears-Lions matchup to be the Spider-Man meme, yes, pointing at each other. Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right. I like that, I think. That's an interesting take here. But we got to take a quick break. We're going to come back with Candace. We're going to talk about her winners and losers of the game here that she wrote a good article about, and probably talk some WNBA here. We got to sneak that in at the end of the segment. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Candace Pedraza of Sideline Report. We're going to talk a little WNBA here in a minute, but I wanted to talk about your article, the winners and losers of the game, because I was pleased to see so many winners. There probably wasn't as many after that first game, but there was a lot of winners and only one loser, and it felt like it kind of came with a bit of a caveat.
Yes, yeah. So the only loser that I felt comfortable even calling a loser, which I never would, because he had a great game, is Marcus Davenport. And that's just because I think all offseason, a lot of Lions fans kept hearing about him working to become a more durable piece of Lions' pass rush. It was a big reason why the Lions decided not to go out and get somebody like Zadarius Smith. And, of course, in the first game where he is looking really solid and getting pressures on Caleb Williams and gets a sack, he hurts his shoulder. Then he had hurt his lower body earlier in the game as well. So he had to keep coming in and out of the game. Al-Qadim Muhammad had a really solid game in relief of him to finish things out. And now we don't know if he's going to be available for Monday Night Football for the Baltimore Ravens in Week 3. So I would say he's a loser just because he is losing playing time potentially, just because injuries just keep following him. And it's disappointing because he is obviously such a great defender when he is healthy, but he just cannot stay healthy long term.
The timing was so rough too. He made that great play, and then he was laying on the ground afterwards, and I was like, no, not now. He's finally, they're getting pressure overall. I thought the pressure was very good. I know Kelvin Shepard was one of your winners in that group. I thought that was a good pick because he did have a good scheme. I know the Packers kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit the first week, but I did think they made some adjustments for that game. I thought he was a lot better at developing the pressure for this particular game. And Davenport's a big part of that. And like you said, now there's some defensive ends off the market. So if you're going to elevate Muhammad, what does that mean? Do they bring up some of those practice squad guys, some of the guys that they signed at the end of the 53-man roster finalization? So I'm hoping he can stay healthy, but he's just not proven that for a while here. So I'm curious to see what he does. But you've got a couple WNBA fans in the house, and you do a good job covering that as well. So I want to give you a chance to cover that here. So to give you a little context, I was a huge Detroit Shock fan coming up during the kind of the glory days of Pistons during that era, and I loved the Shock. I had a buddy that worked for him, and Elaine was really rooting for the Cleveland team to come back, but we're a little miffed that people are saying they don't want to come to Detroit and Cleveland. They're good cities.
One person.
Just one. She seems to be one of the more polarizing people in the WNBA, if I'm reading correctly here.
Yes, absolutely. Your assessment is correct on that one. I don't think a lot of people agreed with her. A lot of players didn't agree. There's a lot of players from Detroit, from Cleveland, from Philly who are super excited for the opportunity to maybe go to these expansion teams in free agency, maybe in the expansion drafts that are coming up for these teams. I understand her complaint from the perspective of there should be a bit more love given to some of the southern states in the United States in terms of giving them more WNBA franchises to root for. But obviously these are the three franchises, Detroit, Philly, and Cleveland, that said, hey, we're willing to put up quite a bit of money in order to support a franchise here and get things started on the right foot for these players as it should be. So I'm very excited. She might not be, but I am, and plenty of other people are, about these cities.
I'm all for them adding ones in the South too. I didn't know that was part of the argument, but that's a good thing to expand the WNBA. I like how much attention it's getting. I like that it's catching on because like I said, I was always a fan of the playing style of the WNBA as a whole when I was younger, but it wasn't really it was hard to watch on TV. It was harder to find. Now they're getting better TV contracts. They're getting better visibility. I want to know if they're going to bring Bill Laimbeer back to coach. I feel like they can't, right? He was such a good coach, but I don't think he's a 2025 women's basketball coach.
I don't think so.
It's rhetorical. Go ahead, Elaine.
No, I just, that actually was something that I was not about him specifically, but I am a big proponent of having female coaches be these, like, there's so much talent out there that there should, in my opinion, be more women coaching these teams than men. And I was just wondering who you think would maybe be able to take on those roles in the next few years to become a coach of one of those teams.
Oh, gosh. I think the two names that come to mind for me are, one, Dawn Staley. I think she has to come in to coach the Philly team because that's just the natural order of things. Like, she is such a Philly legend. She has to come in and, start that franchise off on the right foot. They probably have to pay quite a bit of money to lure her away from the Gamecocks, but I think that she would be very, very interested in taking on that challenge. Another coach that comes to mind is Nola Henry, who's one of the assistant coaches for the Dallas Wings. She is an amazing coach, amazing communicator. Players absolutely adore her. And on Rivals, which is one of the spin-off leagues that started up just this past off season, she coached the winning team in Unrivaled rose BC to a championship. And she is clearly ready to take on a head coaching opportunity in the WNBA. So I think one of these expansion teams presents a great opportunity for her.
Oh yeah, that would actually be really cool to see, to be honest. Are they planning on doing some sort of like expansion draft? Do you know? I don't know how they're going to go about that. I know it's so far in the future, kind of, but.
Yeah, I think so. They are, at least for the next 2 expansion teams that are coming on next season. So the Toronto Tempo and the Portland Fire, they're going to be doing an expansion draft. I could be wrong, but I believe in December. That's when the expansion draft was done last year for the Golden State Valkyries. So they're going to do an expansion draft after that'll be before the WNBA draft, ahead of 2026. And that'll be the process of just taking players that were left unprotected by the other 13 franchises. And I think it would be in December. I could be wrong, though. And then they'll just keep doing that each winter for each franchise or the number of franchises that are joining on throughout the next couple of years.
Do you think that's going to like just affect not the product per se, but the team chemistry for the next few years on all these teams, knowing that there's the players on your team might end up getting picked for this new team? I know always with like contracts and stuff, that's going to be a thing that people worry about to begin with. But now you have to add on the expansion draft to that for the next few years.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. And more often than not, it does seem, at least with the Golden State Valkyries from this year, a lot of those players were taking the expansion draft because they weren't being utilized very much by the teams that left them unprotected. In some cases, though, for example, the New York Liberty left Kayla Thornton unprotected, and she was a huge piece of their championship team.
Yeah, that was
and
wild.
They just could not afford. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's great that they're expanding, but I am concerned what it's going to do for some of the teams.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be an interesting experiment. And I think that we're going to see, depending on how well these expansion draft teams are run, they're going to start to attract some pretty high level stars to their team. I think Golden State is going to be a pretty desirable destination in free agency next year.
It's fun that this is getting expanded. I like the WNBA coming back, and I'm sad you didn't say Detroit, but they're not there yet. Detroit and Cleveland. Hopefully they'll be hot destinations. But we appreciate you joining the show, Candace. Great stuff. Tell the people where they can follow both of your writing allocations here, both publications here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, I do full-time Lions writing over at Sideline Report. It's a fan-sided fan site, so it's just myself and a bunch of other very passionate Detroit Lions fans writing about the team. And I also cover the WNBA for a website called Winsider, WInsider, just without an E, .com. And I also occasionally do writing for the WNBA official website. So those would be the 3 main places you could find any of my coverage.
Be sure to follow her. That's great stuff on all those locations. And it's a good time to follow the WNBA heading into the playoffs here. And with Detroit getting the team, we'll try to cover them more as they hit the market here. But thanks for coming on the show, and we'll look forward to having you on again here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall, DDS, Calder Financial Group, Grand Management, Rydan Investments, JH Realty Partners, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.